Hello, this is Class 3, Part 2, and today we're going to explore something that quietly shapes almost every decision we make, and yet most of us rarely notice it. And we are going to talk about beliefs. Not the beliefs we intentionally choose, like our religions or political beliefs. I'm talking about the unconscious belief we carry about ourselves, about other people, and about how the world works. So these beliefs, they often become the invisible rules that guide our choices. And the interesting thing is that they usually don't feel like beliefs. They simply feel like reality. By the end of today's class, my hope is that you begin to recognize some of the stories you've been living by, stories that may have helped you at one point in your life, but that may no longer be serving the woman you're becoming. So, before we begin today's topic, let's take a moment to look back at the journey we've been together. We started by looking honestly at ourselves, how we see ourselves, how others sees us, and who we want to become. Then we met the many voices within us and discovered how they quietly influences our thoughts, emotions, and decisions. Next, we explore the approval system and how the need for acceptance and validation can shape our choices. And we also practice the felt sense, learning to slow down and listen to the wisdom of our bodies. Um, and then with Ellie during part one, you explored the values and boundaries. We identified what matters the most and how boundaries help us protect the values. But many of you probably noticed something. There's often a gap between what we value and we actually live. If a family matters most, why does work keep coming first? Another example, if authenticity matters, why do we stay quiet? If well being matters, why do we keep saying yes? We often blame ourselves. We think we need more discipline, more confidence, or we simply need to try harder. But what if the real reason is something deeper? What if an invisible belief has been quietly shaping your choices all along? That's what we're going to explore today because the gap between the life we want and the life we live is often not a lack of willpower. It's it's a belief that's been running the show. So I want to invite you to notice something. And before we go any further, I want to be very, very clear. This is not an exercise in self-criticism or judgment. None of us lives in perfect alignment with our values all the time. I certainly don't. Probably you not. So this is because life is complex. We have responsibilities, we have competing priorities, um, old patterns running in our internal systems, and ways to protect ourselves that we often don't even realize are there. So, as you listen to these examples, don't ask yourself, what's wrong with me? Instead, simply become curious. Ask ask yourself what might be happening underneath this. What might be happening underneath this? For example, many of us say family is one of our highest values, but when work becomes busy, family is often the first thing sacrificed. And many of us say health matters, yet we skip meals, don't sleep enough, and rarely give ourselves permission to truly rest. Some may say that authenticity matters, yet we edit ourselves before speaking. We value healthy relationships, but we continue saying yes when we want to say no. So These examples are not evidences that we're failing. They are actually invitation to become curious. Because when our behavior consistently move away from what we value, there's usually something deeper influencing our choices. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. The question is why we keep repeating this pattern. And the answer usually isn't because we don't care. It's because another story is operating underneath. I believe that says something like, if I slow down, I'll fall behind. Or if I disappoint people, they'll stop valuing me. Or my worth comes from what I accomplish. The belief quietly wins over the value. So, what exactly is a belief? So, a thought is something that crosses your mind. Thousands of thoughts pass through our mind every single day. Most disappear almost immediately. A belief is different. A belief is simply a thought that has been repeated so many times that it begins to feel like a fact. And eventually you stop questioning it and it becomes a rule. And once it becomes a rule, we don't even realize that we are following it. For example, you may say, I have to prove myself. I can let people down. Or I need to have everything figured out before I begin. So notice these things we are telling ourselves don't feel like opinion, they feel like true. And that's what makes belief so powerful. One of the biggest misconception is that our emotions are created by what happened to us, but that's usually not how it works. What happens first is our interpretation. Let me give you a simple example. So imagine your manager says, I need someone to lead this new project. Now imagine two different women hearing exactly the same sentence. The first woman thinks, what a great opportunity. I'd love to do it. She feels excited. She volunteers. She gains experience and confidence. The second woman hears the exact same words, but she thinks, I'm probably not ready. What if I fail? She feels anxious. She stays quiet. And someone else gets the opportunity. Same manager, same meeting, same opportunity, and completely different outcomes. So, what changed it? Not the situation, definitely, but the belief changed it. So, one woman believes I can learn as I go, and the other believes I have to be fully ready before I put myself forward. So, the belief shapes the thought shapes the emotion. The emotion shapes the behavior, and the behavior shapes the result. So, this is why two people can experience the exact same situation and walk away with completely different outcomes. It isn't the situation that's different, it's the story they are telling themselves about the situation. So, not all beliefs operate at the same level. Some are easy to notice, others are hidden much deeper. I like to think of beliefs as having three layers. So let's start with layer one, the surface beliefs. So these are the beliefs we usually talk about. They are things we say about ourselves, usually. For example, I'm not good at networking. I am terrible at public speaking, or I'm not confident, or I'm bad with money. Another one is I always procrastinate. So these beliefs are easy to identify because they are close to our behavior. But most of the time, they are not the real problem. They are more like the leaves on a tree. If we cut off the leaves, they will grow back because the roots are still there. And this will take us to the second layer, the operating beliefs. So these are the rules we've learned about how life works. So they are usually harder to recognize because they don't feel like beliefs. They feel like facts. I'll give you an example. If I say no, people will be disappointed. If I slow down, I'll fall behind. If I make a mistake, people will lose confidence in me. Another that I heard the other day is leadership means sacrificing yourself. Or maybe asking for help means I'm weak. So notice the difference. These aren't really statements about who I am. They are, they are rules about how I believe the world works. And because I believe those rules, they influence the decision I make every day. And with that, we're going to reach the layer number 3, which is identity beliefs. So these are the beliefs we hold about ourselves. They answer the question, who do I believe I am? Who do I believe I am? For example, I'm only valuable when I achieve. I have to earn love. I'm responsible for everyone's happiness. I am too much, or I'm not enough. So these beliefs are incredibly powerful because they become part of our identity. When we challenge them, it can almost feel like we're challenging who we are. That's why they can be difficult to change, not because they are true, but because we've lived with them for so long. So let me show you how these 3 layers connect. So imagine someone that says, I can't say no. That sounds like a surface belief. But if we become curious, we might ask, why is it so hard to say no? And maybe the answer might be because good people don't disappoint others. And now we've reached the operating belief. And if we go one step deeper and ask, why does disappointing someone feel so uncomfortable? The answer might be something like, because my value comes from taking care of everyone. And then we reach the identity belief. Can you see the difference? The problem was never really saying no. The real issue was the deeper belief that made saying no so unsafe. And that's why lasting change doesn't happen just by changing our behavior. It happens when we begin to understand the deeper beliefs that have been quietly shaping our choices. Where do beliefs come from? One of the most encouraging things I can tell you today is this. Um, we are not born believing these things about ourselves. We learn them. And most of the time, we learn them through experiences. Something happened, our mind naturally tries to make sense of it. It asks, what does this mean? And the answer we come up with slowly becomes a belief. I'll give you an example. Maybe you were criticized a lot growing up. Without even realizing it, you may have started believing, I have to be perfect. Or maybe you were always praised for helping everyone. And then over time, you may have learned people value me when I'm taking care of others. Or maybe your opinion weren't listened to. And then little by little, you began believing my voice doesn't really matter. Now, here's something I really want you to remember. The experience itself didn't create the belief. The meaning you gave to that experience did. And that's important because if a belief was learned, it can also be questioned. It can be updated. And also, it can be replaced with something that is more true for the woman you are today. Not the woman you had to be years ago, but the woman you are becoming. Now, let's bring everything together. Think back to the values exercise you completed. Think about one value that is really important to you. Now, think about where you're struggling to live according to that value. There's often a belief sitting right in the middle of the gap. Maybe you truly value your family, but every time work gets busy, work comes first. The belief underneath that might be my worth comes from what I achieve. Maybe you value your health, but resting makes you feel uncomfortable or even guilty. In this case, the belief might be rest means I'm lazy. Maybe you value honesty and authenticity, but when it's time to share your opinion, you hold back. And the belief in this case might be something like if people really know what I think, they might judge me. Can you see what's happening? The value hasn't disappeared. You still care deeply about it. The change is that another belief is quietly telling you that living that value isn't completely safe. So, this isn't about blaming ourselves, it's about understanding ourselves. The boundary isn't missing because you're weak, the boundary isn't missing because you don't care. Very often, the boundary is missing because a belief has been trying to protect you. And the question I want you to start asking is that belief still protecting me or is it now holding me back? Now I'd like to invite you to reflect on something. Every belief serves a purpose. At some point in our lives, it probably helped us. It may have helped us feel safe. It may have helped us belong. It may have helped us avoid getting hurt. And that's why we're not here to judge these beliefs. Many of them were trying to protect us. But here's the question. Are they still helping us today? Because every belief gives us something, but every belief also costs us something. Maybe it has cost you an opportunity because you didn't believe you were ready. Maybe it has cost you a promotion because you doubt yourself. Maybe it has cost you confidence because you kept questioning yourself. And this isn't about feeling guilty, it's about becoming aware. Because when we clearly see the cost of a belief, we can begin asking ourselves, is this a price I'm still willing to pay? I think this may be the most important shift in today's class. For many years, whenever something was not working, many of us learned to ask ourselves, what's wrong with me? Why can't I change? Why do I keep doing this? And the problem is, those questions usually lead us to blame ourselves. And self-blame rarely creates change. It, it usually creates shame. So today, I'd like to invite you to ask a different question. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Try asking, what belief might be driving this? Oh, where did I learn this? Is this belief completely true? Is it still helping me or is it holding me back? So, one set of questions judges us. The other set of questions creates curiosity, and curiosity is powerful because curiosity helps us understand ourselves instead of criticizing ourselves. And understanding ourselves is where real change begins. Okay, so we're coming to the end of today's session, and we're now going to move into what I believe is an important exercise that is part of this program. So this is an opportunity to look honestly at the beliefs that may have been quietly shaping your life. As you work through the workbook, don't try to write the beliefs you think you should have. Write the honest ones that are actually there, the ones that influence your decisions, the ones that show up in your relationships, in the way you speak to yourself, or in the way you set or don't set boundaries. And if something uncomfortable comes up, don't rush to change it. Just notice, stay curious. And remember, today isn't about fixing anything. It isn't really about replacing every belief with a positive one. Today is simply about making the invisible visible. Because once you can see a belief, you create a little bit of space between you and it. And in that space, you begin to realize something very, very important. A belief may explain why you've been living a certain way, but it doesn't have to define who you become. So, as you complete this exercise, be honest with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. And remember, we're not looking for perfection. We're simply looking for awareness because awareness is always the first step toward lasting change. And I want to thank you for making time for yourself. Thank you for showing up for this work. I honestly, I really know it's not easy. And it takes time, it takes courage, and it takes a willingness to look inward. But I truly believe that every small step you take brings you closer to living with greater clarity, alignment, and intention. And I hope that little by little you begin to feel lighter, more grounded, and more connected with who you truly are and the woman you are becoming. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you in our live class.